So we digressed a little bit.
Yeah,
Shall
so-
we go back to reading the Nolan Principles?
Yeah, go for it, because there's another 1, 2, 3,
We've
4,
gone.
5.
We reached the second one.
Yeah. Objectivity.
Good conversation starter, I suppose.
It is. Well, it's also-
Number 3, objectivity. Holders of public office must act and take decisions impartially, fairly, and on merit, using the best evidence and without discrimination or bias. Now, that was another one which I would clearly flag up. When they're making a lot of their decisions, it isn't on merit or using the best evidence available.
No, it's not entirely, and I've seen evidence to show
Yeah.
that demonstrates that.
Yeah.
And primarily through people who've referred documentation to me or asked me questions about consultations where the GCP were involved primarily, and that the sources of data they were capturing were from other third-party organisations who didn't necessarily have a full grasp, but yet they were ultimately accurate, not. And are they beholding to that?
Yeah.
So are you relying on a third party's information?
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly you say, because someone finds out it might not be right, or it's inaccurate, or it's out of date, you're no longer responsible for that data. Well, you've based your whole concept or principle of the plan.
Or sometimes
on
it
information.
hasn't. They just say, and that will be because of X. Basically, research yet to come.
Oh, okay. You cannot possibly continue on with the project till you've seen all the evidence. This is, anybody in a court of law would say the same thing.
Yeah,
and I can't possibly make a judgment. if I
So
don't see
what
all
was
the
that thing that you mentioned the other day, just to break from here again quickly, the congestion charge was unworkable because one of the many reasons it was unworkable was because in order to assess every individual's right to have an exemption or not, you would have had to do a means test on that individual, or get some information from them, maybe from the DVLA about their status, or some other body who you would have had to.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the Data Protection Act,
Yeah.
the general data, the GDPR, which was amended of recent years.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question you ask yourself is, well, how many authorities, government departments would you need to engage with to collect that kind of data? And how would you protect it as a local authority? And how would you manage that? So when you looked at the congestion charge, where were the plans for a building to put several dozen staff in who would be responsible, skilled enough and educated enough to know the implications of a breach of data, but also to administer that information in a way that was secure and that it would have the right outcome?
And that hadn't actually been
No costings.
costed in.
No. The argument came after, in exchanges with the public in committee meetings, that we could use a mechanism that would communicate with the DWP, or that we would ask people to provide evidence of their means, i.e. their form of income. If you're receiving state benefits or you have a disabled badge, then we would use that as a means to exclude you from paying a congestion charge.
Very, very problematic.
Some people would have used the phrase "Big Brother watching me" to the magnitude of 100.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's objectivity.
Just saying as it's the observation,
you're right.
isn't it?
So number 4 is accountability.
Yeah.
Holders of public office are accountable to the public of their decisions and actions and must submit themselves to the scrutiny necessary to ensure this. Can I ask you a very quick question, technical question? Holders of public office, does this include both elected representatives and employees?
It's defined in the Localism Act, yes.
Yeah, so the officers,
Absolutely.
they're all holders of public office.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's no exemption to these.
No, the reason that Lord Nolan stated the wording in that way was to make sure it umbrella covered everybody. It's not just about elected representatives.
So what is your opinion on this with regard to accountability, right? And I've mentioned this to you already, but I just wondered where you feel this would land in this kind of, the legal scrutiny aspect of it. If you have decisions being made essentially beyond the council level or the committee level, so you have the full council, and then you have committees and subcommittees and things like that. If you then go further and then create working groups, task forces or what have you, Do those also need to be accountable?
If you're outsourcing,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. You must have integrity and trust in what those third-party organisations or the outsourced
Yeah.
group is delivering you in terms of accuracy,
Yeah.
timeliness, financials, and delivery,
Yeah.
and standards.
Yeah. And if there was an example of decisions being made which affect everybody, which are going on beyond that accountable level, and they're actually...
You need to consult the public. On
Yeah.
any grand scale of spending, it's not about consultation documents, it's about having a mandate for it. And
Sure.
you need to set that out in the beginning.
Yeah.
You need to state
What is the reason you're doing something?
Exactly,
What is
yeah.
the actual aim?
Yeah.
All right, well, we don't need to go any further with that because this one, you know...
Yeah, well, I
we
mean,
can go on.
openness certainly brings you...
Openness is
the
the
next
same thing. Holders of public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public unless there are clear and lawful reasons for doing so. That's the
That comes down to
sensitive
this
intellectual property and stuff like
freedom
that.
of information issue that's been abused.
Yes. Honesty. Holders of public office should be truthful. Leadership. Holders of public office should exhibit these principles in their own behaviour and treat others with respect. They should actively promote and robustly support the principles and challenge poor behaviour wherever it occurs.
This is important. Through all my life, it's been about senior officers observing behaviours and checking with those who are not following due process. Senior officers are responsible for that. There shouldn't be bias that comes from monitoring officers or leaders of the council, and specifically in checking members' behaviour. You know, without good leadership, things start to fall apart. Now, I get there is a democracy and freedom of speech and all that kind of thing, but sometimes you will have, and we've seen examples of it, extremes, well, sometimes not even extremes, sometimes just arrogance or ignorance or obnoxiousness being delivered by your elected members, where they feel the only way is to be aggressive towards others. And yet they have the audacity to say, when people challenge them on it, that they are being bullied or harassed or threatened. And yet they're the ones who provoke and encourage the kind of negative conversation and dissent.
Yeah.
You need to keep your behaviour in check in public service, in public office. By all means, have your say, but say it and choose your words well, and choose them wisely. Educate yourself and understand what the pros and cons are before you start ranting about what you think people should put up with or not. Because all you're going to do is rub everybody up the wrong way, you know? And then everyone wonders, well, why has this happened? Oh, geez. Well, you know what? You set the fire, right? Who's got the, water to put it out with? But it doesn't help. Social media doesn't really help.
No.
But the bottom line is that with the leadership, you've got to have people who have a balanced opinion, who are chairing these committees and making commentary and public speaking. And even in private meetings, sometimes things can be said that shouldn't be said.
Yeah.
But, you know,
But people make mistakes.
the whole purpose of having standards in public service is to make sure that you don't dig a hole for yourself or upset people too much.
Yeah.
Because you have wonderful radical ideas about how to improve life for everybody, but hang on a minute, you need everyone to go along with you in that.
Yeah. So here's an important question then, for just following on from what we've read, and this ties back into what we were talking about before with the complaints procedures and things like this. What happens, what are we supposed to do if 4 or 5 out of these 7, or all 7, are being flaunted or violated or ignored by the people making the decisions or the people imposing things on us? If somebody wants to get at backtrack the decision making through accountability and they can't, or if somebody wants to look at the finances of it, the public finances, which they have a right to do, and they can't, and you know their only option is to go through a dead end 8-month-long complaints procedure,
Yeah.
or use an FOI, Freedom of Information Request, which they then somehow manage to get around because of some other law which you'd never heard of.
Well, let's go back to what we discussed about a half hour back. No complaint procedure should be that daunting or complex. It should be streamlined and straightforward. You lodge a complaint highlighting specifics that you want addressing. The officer should respond and answer them accurately and transparently. If that response does not answer your questions and you have evidence to the contrary, then you step it up to stage 2 and it goes off to a department head. The department head must then analyse that and respond accordingly and offer you the chance then at stage 2, no longer, to go to the LGSCO if you're still not happy and state the reasons why they think you should be invited to do so. Ask them. Put the onus on the local authority to tell you why. Because if their answer is so airtight, why would they be inviting you to approach the LGSCO, wasting taxpayers' time and money and another department's efforts, which obviously need to be focused on more important stuff at the end of the day? So the LGSCO is the next step. Stage 1 and stage 2 of complaints process that we've covered. So you should have a satisfactory response and a resolution to it. If not, then you can go to the LGSCO and ask them to make a judgment call on what's happened. And they'll determine if there is still a further case to answer, if the local authority needs to do something to change their behaviour, their administrative processes, or pay compensation. That's what they must do.
Yeah.
And then they have to adopt what the LGSCO says you should do. Best practice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the key. If they choose not to learn from that and carry on, just being belligerent, arrogant, or whatever, it's just, we can carry on doing what we're doing, then you must question the veracity and tenacity of those individuals to hold those positions of office. Now, it might sound like a lot of work, but at the end of the day, there's a reason there's a process in place, because it requires you to provide evidence that proves your case. Now, if you have a concern about officers, you've got every reason to refer to the Nolan Principles. And you could ask them to answer each point in the Nolan Principles specific to your complaint about service delivery and the way they've handled your complaint. It's very hard for people. Let's face it, someone said something, explain what my integrity is. Wow. Well, hang on. How about you explain the integrity you've applied to answering my complaint?
Apply it to something specific.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
Is there anything else I'm supposed to add to that?
Not really. I think that's covered it quite well. I had another thing related again to what we experienced last year, and also you did touch upon it a minute ago or a few minutes ago, about the bombardment of consultations, the sheer numerous
Consultation
quantity,
exhaustion.
consultation fatigue, and again that's another thing which was taken from the government's guidelines to say this is what we don't want to happen.
Correct. Yeah, Grant Shapps, I think, issued a statement from the Department of Communities when he was there for a short period of time, when he was talking about highways improvements and saying that consultation should be done in a fair and reasonable manner and not to overwhelm the public. Well, I'm sorry, when I looked at what the GCP had been doing recently, they have saturated it to confuse. What else does it do? Well, again, though, said that, they're published in newspaper, they're put on the website. Well, where else do you see them?
I was going to say, could it not be another accidental sort of side effect of this, where it says, everything has to be consulted with the public, and so then they have an obligation to do every one of their actions, use this checklist. You're going to do this, and then consult, and then review, and then enact it. But then if your project has got 65 subsections of a scheme, this greenway, this bus lane, whatever, you're going to end up consulting 65 different projects all within the space of a year or two.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not necessarily their fault, but they kind of almost have to do it. And then the result is the result.
This whole thing of due diligence, and I think any organisation will tell you that it's crucial to make sure that you've ticked those boxes, to make sure that you've covered all aspects.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're leaving yourself open to a significant amount of scrutiny that you might not want to attract, or you do want to attract, for the sake of debate. And if it's not for debate, then it's for dictate.
Very good. What else? Anything else that you want to raise?
No, I haven't. I covered most of it.
That's good.
Yeah.
I
think that's enough for this session.
Pretty much.
If it helps encourage people to step forward and speak
I
up.
would hope so. I would just say thank you for your time and putting yourself forward. I'm very happy that you agreed to be on the camera as well.
Well, I don't hold any particular political view one way or the other.
No.
I observe what I see and hear, and I form a view.
Yeah.
It is an opinion, but also I have a propensity for fact-based observation.
Yeah.
And let's keep it objective, not subjective.
Yeah.
I think these days it's very easy for us to get distracted and heightened with emotion when it comes to talking about these kinds of matters. But I think if you just take a step back and look at it in a cool, calm way, you'll find the answers you need to be able to challenge.
Yeah.
And that's how I've tried to do my job in local authority and public service in central government for some considerable years. And it's kind of worked for me in part most all the time. Honesty, transparency, integrity, care, have empathy, think about the effect it has on others. You know, listen to what people have to say, and do listen. You know, mean it when you say I understand. Don't say I hear what you're saying. It's just dismissing. You know, it's patronising. Do not patronise the public. You could be in there on a vote or out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, a couple more questions then, just to round off, just while I've got you. So if we're in the middle of an election period at the moment, and while I've been doing the door-to-door stuff, I've been asking people what is important to you, and if you could raise something with your councillor right now from your area or your experience, what would it be?
Well, if it was my area, in my ward, it's about antisocial behaviour, paramount. It's the use of roads, safety of the roads. That's key. And it's housing.
Okay.
Those are the three for my area. If I look at the whole of the city, it's back to basics. Cleanliness, access to services, housing, certainly, road use, freedom to move around without encumbrance. And let's have some transparency over how they're spending the money. There are all these wonderful schemes coming out of, plucked out of the sky, and who's associated with them, and how they're connecting, and where is the money coming from to facilitate this happening. You know, let's have a bit of real basic transparency on that, and the capacity to scrutinise it, and not be shut down by a chair in a committee if you ask the wrong question. That is not democracy. It doesn't matter how they espouse it. The percentage of them time you watch these things and you see a chair of the committee shutting down a conversation because it's not going the direction they want it to. Ask yourself the question, why? What have we got to hide? What's in their interest to shut you up?
Do you have any do you have any advice for anybody younger than yourself who may be looking at the world wondering, my God, what is going on with this? How are we going to make...
If anything, you have a better insight into the way the world is shaping, and it's reliant on you to make it better and change it. So get involved. Find out more. There's a lot of career opportunity in government, whether it be central or local, or even standing as a candidate. You know, young people today have a very powerful voice if they learn to use it well. And, you know, I'd say when I look to my fellow musicians in the world, if you really want to make an impact, put yourself out there. Don't just rely on the fact you can play a piano or a trumpet or an oboe, whatever. Put your personality out there and see what happens. Be honest with people. Show them your emotions. Show them you're passionate. Show them you mean what you say. And you'll be surprised how people warm to you.
That's very good. Tom, thank you for coming again.
You're welcome.
This is William Burnell interviewing Tom Davison. We're here in the historic Guildhall courtroom because I felt the symbolism was, powerful.
Justice for all,
yes,
power
exactly.
to the people.
But also, it's a nice private space that looks quite nice rather than just an empty office.
Yeah.
That's it then, I suppose. We made it. The batteries held out on 2 out of 3 cameras and the thing. And
one ping, my bad.
That's all right. And it's picked us up the audio, and it was 1 hour and 27 minutes. So perfect. All right.
Cut.
I will let you go then. You're free to go.
I was going to say, that's going to be one hell of an edit job, that.
Yeah, that'll be the next 2 days' worth, I should think.
But you've got enough material.